I lived a perfectly ordinary life until tragedy struck our family. My wife's father, my father-in-law, passed away unexpectedly. I can't say a bad word about him, on the contrary, he was a wonderful man. If the situation called for it, he'd give you the shirt off his back. My wife, Vera, loved him deeply. She was constantly in touch with him, naturally, even after his death. After he died, she looked like a living corpse. Her appetite vanished, she slept almost all the time. She answered all questions with single words. She even had to quit her job, though I had hoped her boss would understand her state and grant her unpaid leave for the occasion. But no, such employees were not needed. Pained me to look at my wife, but I didn't know how to help her. Through an acquaintance, I managed to get some prescription medication somehow. As she took it, her condition did improve a bit. However, there were some things even the medication couldn't fix. Vera asked me to take her to the cemetery every week. Usually, my wife and I would go together, leaving our daughter with my mom. But this time, things didn't go according to plan. Friday was approaching, and Vera, as usual, asked me to take her to her father's grave. I didn't refuse and immediately dialed my mother's number. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" Instead of the usual greeting, I heard from the speaker, "Oh, son, not well. What happened?" I got worried. "Seriously, Dad, just a high fever, sore throat." Thank God, that's what I thought. My mom laughed. "Oh, come on, everything's fine. Why are you calling?" "Well, Vera wants to go to the cemetery again." "Ah, I see. No, guys, sorry, I can't help you out." I figured, maybe I can bring you some medicine? The topic of conversation changed, and afterwards I told Vera the news. We had nowhere to leave the child, so tomorrow we'd all go together. Saturday arrived, and my wife had been awake since early morning. She made breakfast for me and our daughter but refused to eat herself. A couple of hours later, we arrived at the cemetery. Vera approached her father's grave and started talking to him as if he were alive. I watched this scene with apprehension, and then what I expected and feared happened. My wife fell into hysterics. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She uttered fragments of phrases in a trembling voice. While this sight was familiar to me, our daughter, Karina, clearly hadn't anticipated it. "Okay, do you have your phone with you?" I asked her. Go take a walk, just don't go far." "Okay, Dad." Our daughter turned and paced slowly back and forth. I kept a discreet eye on her while simultaneously trying to calm my wife. I don't know exactly how much time passed, but Vera didn't calm down quickly. Somehow, I managed to quiet her and convince her to go home. "And where's Karina?" she asked in an anxious voice. "Somewhere around here. I'll call her now." She wasn't visible anywhere, but as soon as I managed to call her, she said she hadn't gone far and would be right there. A minute later, I saw her silhouette near the fence. We got in the car and drove home. I need to do something. It seems to me that the more Vera goes there, the worse it is for her. But what to do about it is also unclear. I can't forbid her from going, and yet seeing her in that state is unbearable. I spent the whole day dealing with tasks that had piled up over the week. And as soon as my head hit the pillow, sleep didn't keep me waiting. That night, I slept like a log, but I woke up full of energy. The same couldn't be said for Vera. She looked disheveled and agitated. No, these grave visits definitely need to stop. "Vera, what's wrong with you?" She was silent for a few seconds, as if tasting the words, then said in a half-whisper, "Honestly, I don't understand myself." "What do you mean?" "Well, I don't know how long I slept or if I even slept at all." "Did you take your pills yesterday?" "That's just it, I did." "All right, just tell me already, because I don't understand anything." "Well, you fell asleep, I wasn't playing on my phone yet. Anyway, I didn't really feel like sleeping. Then, after I put the phone away, I needed to use the bathroom. I went to the bathroom, lay down again, and again, didn't feel like sleeping. Just didn't want to, that's all. So I'm lying there counting sheep. Anyway, sleep wasn't in the cards. Eventually, from just lying there, my head started hurting. I went to the kitchen to take another pill. I took it, and about 20 minutes later, I started to sort of fall asleep but didn't actually sleep. After this phrase, she bit her lip. Clearly, she was debating whether to continue or not. Well, what then? Vatic, promise you won't send me to the loony bin. I tensed up. Vera, what's wrong? She began speaking incoherently, all the while fidgeting with the corner of the blanket in her hand. Anyway, I'm lying there, and I hear footsteps in the hallway. You're asleep, Karina's asleep. What's wrong with me? Huh? Am I hallucinating? Am I going crazy? Could it be a side effect? All right, stop. You said you were already falling asleep. Yeah. Maybe you dreamed it? She shrugged. Maybe I did. Who knows? Okay, fine. Of course, I won't put you in a psychiatric hospital, but you really should see a doctor. And, I understand this will be hard for you, but maybe we could cut down on the cemetery visits a bit? I was thinking about that too. Enough, or the dead might start following us. All right, Vera, lie down, rest. I'll make breakfast for our daughter myself. Thanks. My wife almost immediately lay on her side and fell asleep. I tried to be as quiet as possible and told our daughter not to make too much noise. She understood, and we spent almost the whole day tiptoeing around. Closer to evening, Vera woke up. We had dinner, I went to the bedroom, and Vera and Karina were talking about something in the kitchen. In the morning, I got ready as quietly as possible and left the apartment. The workday started, as usual in a frenzy, but closer to lunch, I managed to sort things out. I put a container of food in the microwave and waited for it to beep, but Vera called. Vadim, come home immediately. She was screaming, not speaking loudly, not demanding, but actually screaming. Vera, what happened? I can't tell you over the phone. Just get permission to leave and come. Horrible pictures started forming in my mind on their own. Something with Karina? Yes. That one-word answer to my question was enough for me to shoot out of the office like a bullet. I immediately called my boss. He understood everything and let me go without further questions. I flew home like a madman. Looks like I won't escape fines. But to hell with them, I don't even know what happened there. Quickly opening the door, I prepared for the worst. But I was met only with bewilderment. What the hell? Was all that escaped me? Because our daughter was standing in the hallway. Alive and well, by the way. From Karina's look, I could tell she had the same question. But it was scary to look at Vera. A face swollen and red from tears, disheveled hair, and trembling hands. Sweetie, what happened? I asked her, realizing my wife wouldn't answer this question normally. Dad, I don't know. Mom came into my room and started yelling at me. Out of nowhere. Yeah, I was just sitting and playing. Exactly. She was just sitting and playing. But not alone, Vera suddenly wailed. Yes, Mom, it was the phone. Honestly, our daughter began to justify herself, looking down at the floor. All right, Vera, what happened? I demanded an explanation from my wife. I was sitting in the kitchen making lunch, and I heard some voices. Well, I thought it was the neighbor kids chatting in the yard. The windows are open so you can hear everything. But then the chatter got annoying. I turned off the burner and went to the room. The window in the room was closed, but I could still hear the conversation. Here Vera started sniffling, and well, I went out into the hallway. I heard the sounds were coming from Karina's room. And then, nothing, I was too scared to go in there. So I called her. She came out, and there was no one in the room. To be honest, at that moment, I stood there like a fool, not knowing what to say. Karanaka, tell Daddy, how did it all happen? I asked my daughter. I was just talking to a friend on the phone. That's all, she answered, spreading her hands. At that point, it became crystal clear to me that the trouble wasn't with Karina but with Vera. Either the pills were affecting her that way, or she was going crazy from grief. I didn't go back to work that day. I dedicated the rest of it to a long talk with my wife. I insisted she see a doctor about this problem. She assured me everything was fine. In the end, we didn't reach any agreement. We argued fiercely. So either you go to the doctor on your own 2 feet or I'll call your mother. Don't, not Mom. Then you're going to the doctor. And no more talking. She was offended by my statement. But that was to be expected. In her eyes, I was a despot forcing her to admit her own madness. Well, yeah, obviously, just like no alcoholic admits to being an alcoholic. Perhaps the same goes for the mentally ill. They can't muster the courage to admit it. I personally made an appointment for her with a private psychiatrist, understanding it would cost a pretty penny. So be it, as long as she gets better. The very next day, my wife went to the doctor, and I must say, very reluctantly. Meanwhile, I went to work with a calm mind. Life seemed to be slowly getting back on track. Vera was changing and becoming calmer. True, not without the help of medication. But at least now there was no reason for fear. However, we still had to send our daughter to my mom's, just in case. The weekend was approaching. Instead of going to the cemetery, Vera decided to go out with a friend. I was all for it and assured her I'd be fine relaxing alone. I was looking forward to drinking beer and watching football all day. But my plans were not meant to be. Around noon, my mom called and said Karina wasn't feeling well. I didn't ask her to take care of her. I decided to pick up our daughter myself. As it turned out, nothing serious. Just a stomach ache from too many chips and chocolate. Back home, I gave our daughter some medicine. She took the pills and went to her room. I still wanted to empty a couple of cans of beer, so I didn't have to think long. I settled comfortably in front of the TV in the kitchen and watched the sports channel with great interest. However, after a while, something kept distracting me from the broadcast. Some extraneous sounds kept pulling me away from the TV. Somehow managing to wait for a commercial, I muted the sound and listened. Soon it became clear where the sounds were coming from. It seemed Karina was talking to someone on the phone again. I picked up the remote and was about to turn the TV volume back up when I suddenly dropped it on the floor, and it clattered loudly on the tile. Our daughter's phone was charging right there in the kitchen. Then what the hell was happening in her room? "Karina, what's going on in there?" I exclaimed, but silence was the only answer. Without waiting, I jumped up and quickly headed to her room. What's this now? The door to her room was locked from the inside. "Karina, what's happening?" "Dad, everything's fine." "Open the door." "Why? Now, or I'll break it down myself." I yelled so loudly my ears rang. Of course, she could lock her door, we didn't forbid it. But the door to her room was never locked. A few seconds later, she opened the door, and I immediately burst into the room. What the hell? There was no one in the room. The laptop was off, the phone was charging. It was empty under her bed. Just in case, I checked the closet, though it wasn't necessary. It was quite small, no one could fit in there. I didn't forget to check the window. We live on the 3rd floor, of course, but you never know. "Karina, sweetie, who were you talking to?" I asked as calmly as possible. "No one." "Don't lie," I shouted and slammed my fist on the desk. "Dad." Tears welled up in our daughter's eyes. I hugged her and said, "Honey, you understand, we're all very worried." I was alone, honestly, just talking to a friend on video chat. "But how did you turn off the computer so fast?" "What, you don't believe me?" She started sniffling again, and I readily agreed with her version. But I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to install a camera in her room. I really don't like any of this, and I forced Vera to see a psychiatrist. I need to do something. I clearly heard the sounds. Before bed, I seriously thought about taking unpaid leave, or at least some days off. Yeah, I need to talk to my boss about this tomorrow. I decided not to tell Vera anything for now. What if she gets worse? And what am I? Can't I figure this out on my own? Of course I can. With these thoughts, I rolled over on my side and soon fell asleep. The workday went even better than expected. My boss readily signed my leave request, and I finished my last working day. Soon it was time to go home, but first, I went not home but to an electronics store. Unfortunately, they didn't have the kind of cameras I needed in stock, so I had to order online. Okay, I hope the delivery won't take 2 days. While I was wandering around the stores, the traffic cleared, and now there were almost no cars on the road, so I could relax and drive calmly. That's what I did. One hand on the wheel, singing along to the radio. Suddenly, I had to slam on the brakes. A teenager appeared out of nowhere in front of me. "What are you doing?" I yelled through the open window. He just looked at me, turned around, and quickly ran off the road. Idiots! Is it really so hard to walk 2 steps to the crosswalk? Once home, I told my wife and daughter I wouldn't be going to work for a couple of weeks. My wife was happy, but Karina's reaction was strange. Her face clearly showed fear mixed with confusion. I didn't want to pry into why she reacted that way. In the end, it was clear Karina wouldn't give a sensible answer and would most likely lie. That night, I suddenly woke up because I desperately wanted a smoke. This often happened to me, so there was no reason to be surprised. I fought the urge for a bit, but it won in the end. Sticking my feet into slippers, I threw on a jacket and crept into the hallway as quietly as possible. I didn't want to wake my family or the other neighbors with a loud door slam, so I just closed it gently. One drag, then another, and I felt better. I looked peacefully at the night sky through the dusty hallway window as the cigarette burned down almost to the filter. I took a final drag, then threw the butt into an improvised ashtray and turned around. Fuck escaped me involuntarily. From the surprise, my whole body jerked, and I cursed. Standing opposite my apartment door was a teenager. The same teenager I had almost hit on the road today. But how did he sneak up so quietly? I hadn't heard any footsteps or the elevator doors. Was he already here? Hey, kid, what are you doing here? He was silent. Who am I talking to? I hissed venomously, as the situation was starting to really piss me off. I came for your daughter, he said without any emotion in his voice. For who? Listen, get lost. As I talked to him, I noticed something strange. His skin was unnaturally pale, like his face had been dipped in whitewash. I'll take her anyway, he said in an icy voice, and I remained standing in the vestibule. The teenager slowly retreated, walking down the stairs. His last phrase frightened me and simultaneously infuriated me. So, my daughter is only 8 years old, and some overgrown kid shows up saying he'll take her? Returning to the apartment, I immediately woke my wife and daughter and demanded an explanation, specifically from Karina. Honestly, I was prepared to hear anything, but not this. Karina suddenly burst into tears and said through her sobs, "You'll scold me. Tell me, this is no joke anymore." I answered sternly, "It's Lyosha. I took a toy from him at the cemetery." "What do you mean? Did you meet him at the cemetery?" Vera asked, perplexed. "No, remember, you told me I shouldn't take anything from the cemetery. So what? While you and Dad were sitting at Grandpa's grave, I went for a walk and took a toy from one of the graves." "Wait, daughter, you brought a toy from the cemetery?" I asked. "Yes." "You're not lying to me and Dad?" "No, I remember where I took it." Without waiting for morning, as if by unspoken agreement, we drove to the cemetery. Fortunately, that grave was quite close to the road, and Karina really wasn't lying. From the headstone, that very teenage boy was looking at us. Good thing my wife hadn't had a face-to-face encounter with his likeness before. But inside me, it was as if a thread had snapped. Until now, I hadn't believed in mysticism or the esoteric at all, and now this. Although maybe it was his twin brother playing a joke. That's quite possible this Lyosha died just 5 months ago, and there are plenty of idiots nowadays. Maybe a relative decided to prank us like that. Karina immediately placed the toy on the grave, and I fumbled in my pocket for a caramel and placed it next to the headstone too. On the way back, we didn't speak to each other. And when we got home, we immediately went to our separate rooms. After that incident, joy completely left our home. Both I and my wife were in complete shock from the situation. And Karina, most likely, was ashamed in front of us. Even though we explained that everything was okay, she seemed unwilling to listen. Damn, it looks like the whole family needs to see a psychiatrist now. My vacation was coming to an end. I lay in bed at home, thinking about tomorrow. Going back to work, I really didn't want to. And who cares? Right, no one. The first day back from vacation didn't go well for me. I kept spacing out. Vera said she'd go to her mother's in the morning, and Karina would be left to her own devices. Well, that's fine, she's a big girl, she'll find something to do. There were only about 10 minutes left until the end of the workday. I sat fidgeting in my chair, not taking my eyes off the clock. Damn it, why do the clocks move so slowly at the end of the workday? A phone call snapped me out of my reverie. It was my wife. I answered almost immediately and asked in a routine tone, "Why are you calling?" "Vadik, you." She said it in a voice as if something terrible had happened. Vera, I swear, in that minute the ground disappeared from under my feet. How is that possible? Suddenly went dark in my eyes. I grabbed my head with my hands and asked, "Who told you?" "The neighbor." "I'm on my way there now," I told my wife and, without waiting for a response, hung up. The rest of the journey I covered completely on autopilot. My wife's words that our daughter was no longer in this world kept replaying in my head. But how? Our wiring is fine. And Karina never played with matches and always handled fire carefully. And now what? Did that little creep really take her? Was it all real? And I drove up to the house. My hands instantly turned to ice. My heart was pounding wildly, and my legs felt like cotton. Not feeling them, I dragged myself to the entrance. A crowd of onlookers had already gathered under the windows of our apartment, arguing about something. Firefighters were flooding the apartment with water. Police were writing something down, and I just stood there, watching flames shoot out of the broken windows of our apartment.